Hello and welcome to the Freedom Experiment. On this episode, I have with me Polly McGee, and I'll let her introduce herself because it can get a bit complex. So how are you, Polly McGee?
Hey, Smitty. I'm great. Hey, freedom lovers. So, I wanted to talk about the way that we conceptualize ourselves because this is something that comes up for me all the time. And I do a lot of interviews and podcasts, and people are like, oh, well, how do you introduce yourself? You've got all these hats you wear. And so I kind of really thought about it because I realized I had this ever expanding, I'm an author, I'm a this, I'm a that, and in the design world, they call us slashies because it's like this with the slash in between. And I just thought, like, why do we have to introduce ourselves based on what we do? It's kind of like introducing ourselves by saying, so this is what my salary looks like. This is how kind of cool I am. And instantly people are like ranking themselves and judging, do I do what she does? Am I there? It's such a nuts way, but it's such a Western way to conceive of our identity. So I changed my bio to say all-purpose human being. And so people say to me, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm an all-purpose human being. And it's so great because it means I don't have to kind of break it down into what bit of my skill set do you want. But it also means that I am all-purpose. I'm solely here to deliver my purpose as a human being in this lifetime. And so it suddenly allows me to just be a massive spiritual wanker in the background. So it ticks every box.
Perfect. No, I really like that. We do assume to put some labels on people
Yeah,
and straight away think, oh, that means she's successful, or that means that she's
yeah,
not, and all these things. And actually what we're trying to get away from is these labels. And that's what I'm
yeah,
trying to introduce on this
yeah,
through this channel,
yeah,
is that all these labels are just like convictions through the mind that we don't need to put on each other, and they're restricting.
100%.
We don't need to restrict each other to an author
Yeah,
or to some crazy dude trying to do a podcast, or to a carpenter. I mean, I've been trying to get
yeah,
out of the label of a carpenter for probably my whole
yeah.
life.
But it's interesting how much we seek to label and categorize people. We're looking for comfort and ease in every way we can, but we're not looking for true comfort and ease. We're looking for a way of separating and sorting ourselves into us and other. If we want to work towards non-duality, the way to do it is to stop going, you're a carpenter, I'm an author, or I'm a this, because instantly there's a divide. If we're working towards all one, which is my major project in the world, then I can't have a separation between me and you because that thing that I did that one time is sitting absolutely in that impermanence. What are we right now? We're both people with headphones on. Like this is the present moment. That's all we're going to be. When you see this recording, we'll forever be people with headphones on. David, he wears headphones. Yeah, Polly wears headphones. Yeah. Oh, we should follow them. They've got some wisdom to share.
And then they'll meet me and I'll just be naked in the creek or something. And I'll be like, that's that
Yeah,
dude that's naked in the creek all the time.
yeah,
And it'll be like, I'll be labeled as that. And then it'll be, oh, that's not me because he's down at the creek naked and I don't like
yeah.
that. So I'm not going to be like that. So, yeah.
Totally, but you see how it happens, I think it's a great new project for us to work on, Naked in the Creek. Oh, sorry, I mean headphones.
Let's not put the image in those people's minds too
It's too
quickly,
late.
I suppose.
That
Too late,
puppy's
sorry.
that puppy's out of the bag. I'm still struggling with the fact that you've got a wood fire. So now Naked in the Creek's just
Yeah, the sun is shining. I have a wood fire, and I'm going to go for a swim in the creek later, which is freezing cold, and do my Wim Hof breathing and be
oh,
naked. Yeah.
I love that so much. Now, much as I'm loving this celestial thing that's happening here, I'm just going to tone it down for a minute because I don't think any one of you are ready to see me in my full form.
Well, you were saying you're just a divine being that's full of purpose. So I
Totally.
think that was just
Yeah,
shining
that's
a light
right.
on that. It was just
That's
shining a
right.
light on that.
Punctuation, thanks to Creator.
So let's get down to it. What are we talking about here? We're talking about freedom, and we're talking about labels through the mind. So what's your
Yeah.
experience of freedom and freedom intertwined with mine? That's what I'm about.
Look, freedom for me has in this present moment has evolved to this quest to really deeply, truly understand what is it when I am in my I am body? What is it when I am nothing but connection without edges? And it's a really difficult polarity for humans because we're in these bodies, we're on the earth, we're rocking around having individuated physical experiences. But we are part of this great remembering of who we are when we're connected. So for me, freedom has really been, and particularly during this COVID time where I've been spending a lot of still time rather than rushing around doing all my all-purpose human being work. I've really been spending a lot of time just thinking about what is it, how do I get to that place where I'm not constantly sorting and separating. So freedom for me is freedom from the borders and freedom from thinking of myself as separate and differentiated to others. And I tell you what, it's the hardest yogic practice I've ever undertaken because it's just so constantly like, oh man, just judged someone again. What? Shit. Yeah. So yeah, I constantly stay in that place. So freedom to me is the freedom to disappear and the freedom to live without those edges and simultaneously be in the world and be in service. It's kind of a big call.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's amazing. I think so needed in these times, and not looking at people as other is definitely the moment by moment recognition that I strive for also, and coming from yoga and meditation, and then I realized that it is in every single moment that my mind may straight away judge something, or as soon as I become a yoga teacher, then it's like, well, I'm a yoga teacher and you're a student now, and it's like, hold on, what am I doing to myself and all these people around me? And then just realize that all these layers and layers and layers of conditioning just need to just keep dissolving, keep unraveling, keep just bringing us back to that place. And it's nothing to do with being on the yoga mat. It's to do with just walking down the street and getting your groceries and just seeing that person that's serving your groceries as yourself. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think I was speaking to someone the other day who runs a really amazing yoga. It's a yoga activism world, actually. I'm going to give her a big shout out. It's called Get Off Your Asana, based in Australia. And it's all about how do we as yogis, collective yogis, make change in the world, because that's what we're here for. And she was sort of talking about putting the yoga back into yoga. And it's a really interesting thing that we've managed to create an identity for yoga, which is 100% about movement and aesthetics. It's very rare that people talk about yoga without talking about an asana. And so to understand that yoga is everything. It's the way we breathe. It's the way we sit. It's the way we walk. And not in terms of I'm being a good yogi. You know, we're just caught in an ego yet again. It's literally, as you say, it's picking up the groceries. It's feeling the world around you as you walk down the street. It's looking at those trees outside your window and thinking like, thank you, look at you, amazing. Look what you're doing for us every day. It's really a way of total being, which was always what it was. You know, we've commodified it and we've made it into the bits that are easy because it's not so hard to bust out an asana. But holy shit, is it hard to connect with everything and to take ourselves into that discipline of everything that yoga asks us to be. So it's like we've done a little silver bullet dodge yet again, but it's the whole world.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. I felt that my trip in India really crashed down upon me. There was nowhere else to go but to see where I was separate, and then when I was more unified with beggars on the street or with people driving me around. There's such a white privilege. You feel like I'm in this white privilege place, and then I'm like, I don't want to be like that either. And then so there's so many teachings in India that I could never have got over here, I don't think. And I'm so grateful for all that.
What an amazing country. One of the things I love about India so much is that I love the people so much, because I really love seeing a country that is wholly, and again, this is a gross generalization, wholly based on a spiritual culture. So you can see that particularly when you're out in regional areas, but I like the way people make eye contact in India. You know, a lot of Westerners are saying to me, oh, it's so intrusive. And it's like, it's so real. How often do we look someone in their eyes? Not in their face, not at their hair, not at their clothes, but into their eyes. And I find in India, people come up to you and they're like this, and they look in your eyes and they ask you a really personal question. And you're like, oh, hey, like, we don't really have this separation. We aren't doing this politeness thing. We're just doing this people thing. And we're sort of hungry and curious about, who are you? What are you doing? But I love that sense that you can just catch the eye of someone there and you have a real exchange. And I mean, the crazy thing is you can do it here too. And it's so often I do a lot of leadership work now, and we always make people sit and look at each other's eyes. And so often they'll say things like, oh, I felt really violated. So how have we got to a place where by looking someone in the eyes, we feel violated? I mean, these are the big questions. That's not freedom. Just took us from India right back to Australia in one quick sentence.
I suppose your next question to that would be like, who's being violated? would be the
Yeah.
question you would
But
ask.
when intimacy, and I mean, I think one thing I like about the eyes is short of shutting your eyelids, you can't close down what's inside. When you look in someone's eyes, they truly are the window to the soul. And there's that sense of a connection that is unspoken. It's like when we think about what's ineffable, what is that understanding of meeting God or creator or connection, like those are things that we don't have adequate language for, which is appropriate because how could we ever put into human words what it is to be connected to that vastness? So when we see the face of that in someone else, it's an invitation to look at the divinity of all of us. That's shocking. That violation is the violation of you've shown me what I can be, and I'm frightened to step in there. But it's really magical.
Wow, sounds yeah beautiful. And I think I had a stage in my life where I couldn't look at people in the eyes for
Yeah,
sure, and yeah, it was a place of vulnerability that I couldn't really
yeah,
show myself and I couldn't shine. And now I love looking at people in the eyes, and I feel really confident in myself, and I just want to share the love in between us, or the connection
yeah,
in between us, that we are both from the same source,
yeah.
as essentially not tomato sauce, the consciousness sauce, but
Nothing wrong with tomato consciousness sauce. It's part of the divine, right?
yeah,
Hey,
it is.
I just want to circle back to
Yeah.
that word that you used, that really beautiful word, vulnerability, which I think you had have something really interesting to say about that from the masculine perspective. It's something I do a lot of engagement with because I think this is the vulnerability is the beginning of the entrance to really kind of like looking at our divinity, prizing away and seeing what that is. Because it's the most vulnerable thing ever to show someone who you really are, to live without armor. You know, again, back to freedom. Freedom for me, it's the capacity to live without armor in a world where I can be who I am. So tell me about your experience of vulnerability because I'm so happy you used that word.
Yeah. Yeah, vulnerability for me was probably a stepping stone towards opening towards something outside of myself. And it didn't come from this easy place where I just decided to start meditating on a mountain and then become this peaceful dude that lives in a creek. It came from like a lot of like heavy pounding that of the world crashing down on me, and all these different realities that I was creating really just crushed me, and crushed my like ego identity, and it left me in a place of confusion and misunderstanding for a year or two. And I needed that. Like I needed that. I was like I still love footy. I was a like AFL footballer, not pro, not professional, but AFL footballer, carpenter. Very strong masculine environments. Going out on the weekends, partying. Great. Like look, I love the life. It's not a. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying it got to a point for me when it was like my late 20s where things just started to really not add up, and then just more anger, more frustration, working hard, not really feeling like chasing all these goals and getting all these financial like things adding up, and getting what I wanted, but just not feeling fulfilled. And then that
Yeah.
just is what got me into a space of like, well, actually I don't know anything. I don't
Mm.
know why I'm doing this actually, and I don't know. And that was more when I got into more of a softer space, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah.
And as you say, the armor started to unravel, and then I finally just started doing a little bit more yoga, and then I went to the Krishna villages where we met, and that was my sort of first experience of being in a place surrounded by so many other beings that didn't have so much armor either, and we're all kind of working
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I don't need to create an identity to be in the world, I suppose.
Mm.
And I suppose I realized this later on. I didn't realize it so
Yeah.
intuitively at the time, but then I realized that being in that vulnerable space was the only place that I could truly be.
Yeah.
Like I could truly just be, and I didn't have to go with the boys down the pub and say like I'm Smitty and this is what Smitty does
Yeah.
and he's loose and picks up women and stuff like that. It was more. I realized that. Well, right now I realize I can just. I can still go with the boys and just be there, and just I'm just
Yeah.
enjoying being in their company, but I don't really need
Yeah.
to prove. I don't need to prove
Yeah.
myself. I don't need to
Yeah.
prove anything about who I am or where I'm from or why I'm doing anything. I'm realizing that I can just be here and just enjoy.
So juicy, Smitty. I mean, it's so true though, isn't it? I think that really resonates with me, that idea. Well, A, that it's not easy, and that nothing about this work is easy. Taking off armor it sounds like you can just kind of pick it off like a garment. It's absolutely welded to us. So you need to be pummeled. And the more we've spent years developing the protection mechanisms of having the identities, the harder and harder it is to kind of break through that, because we sort of forget what's underneath all of that stuff. But I just was thinking then that for the first time I really had that clear vision of when people talk about surrender at rock bottom, and that most people's surrender stories happen at the end of addiction or of terrible breakups or of a situation that's been so sort of devastating and shaming that they lose their identity. And I just had this moment of thinking, this is how it happens, and this is why the people will always say, oh, well, I was at rock bottom, I called out for help, or I just said, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And suddenly they have these visions, or they have these moments that take them into spirituality, take them back to their divinity. And it comes from the part where they suddenly realize that they aren't that. And that's, again, like I'm making a point of the masculine part of that, because I think for men it's so much harder, because you're taught that vulnerability is weakness. You're taught that you have to be sort of strong warriors all the time. That ego identity is so specific. And you're still, like everyone, you're still feeling all the feels underneath all of that weight of society and weight of gender. And so beautiful to be able to get out from under it and just still be Smitty. Nothing changes.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the thing we don't realize. We're still there under that. The people that love you, they still love you. The people that were in love with your armor, they weren't in love with you to start with. So it's like they're off there doing their thing, but we're just all okay underneath it all.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Thank you, Polly, for highlighting all those. Yeah, very good. So that would probably bring us into like how we're accessing this state, and what practices do you have in your environment there?
I have just a joyful and absolutely rock solid dedicated meditation practice. Meditation is probably one of the big things that really, really changed my life in terms of when I committed to doing it all the time and did a really rigorous daily practice. And by rigorous, I don't mean it's hard. It just means that I commit to doing it rain, hail or shine, no matter what condition I'm in. If I've been down the pub with the boys being loose, and I'm still doing meditation. So every day I do a meditation practice every morning, and then I have a continual practice of reminder. I remind myself about spirituality. I remind myself about divinity. I remind myself all the time. If you look around the office that I'm in now, there's the whole place is covered with images that remind me of the things that take me back to who I am and take me back to my core. So my practice is to be yoga and to be in that place all the time, which really helps because I work for myself, and the work that I do allows me to speak like this, to roll out this kind of shiz day and night. I'm always there and I'm always in that practice, but it wasn't always that way. And I think I'm very grateful for having that now, because when I didn't have it, when I was in corporate world and when I was in business identity and I was constantly sort of striving to be something that had a lot of labels attached to it, I didn't have any of that comfort and joy. And I certainly had the spirituality on the inside, but I wasn't letting it out because I thought it would make me look weak or look woo-woo or all the things that I didn't want to be in that kind of, out there successful in the world identity. And that was the great thing, that when I kind of went, oh, I just want to do this all the time. I just want to be able to be this person, and I don't want to be wearing a suit, and I don't want to be sitting at meetings, and being tough guy. And God, the relief of actually recognizing that and releasing myself from that was so great. So now my practice is able to be everywhere in everything that I do. And I feel like I'm really out of the closet about just being massively on this path. All I want to do is meditate and be in the world and be in service.
Beautiful.
It's just heavenly.
Yeah.
That's my practice.
Beautiful. When you made that decision to like sort of drop the corporate world, is that when the inspiration to write Dogs of India, to write The Good Hustle, is that when that inspiration sort of came, once you sort of let go of having to be in that world?
I'd already written Dogs of India because that was really inspired by my first trip to India, and sort of I was given that story in India, and it was literally it was like I was tapped on the shoulder, and I energetically was told I had to write this book, and I was like, I'm not a writer, just here looking at the monkeys, looking at the dogs, but it was really insistent. The tapping kept coming, and I came back to Australia, and I was like, oh no, I haven't got time to write a book. I want to write nonfiction. I'm a business person, but it kept on tapping. So I just followed that. And I was still in that sort of corporate world then, and I think really, I really had a sort of rock bottom moment of just being so deeply unhappy in that awful way when you have everything you've ever needed and everything you've ever wanted, and you've achieved all the stuff, and that you know that you're just completely hollow. And I just really felt that I got this job that I'd always wanted to have, and I was working for the ABC. I had my own radio show. I was like fully like, and I'd always wanted to be a broadcaster. It was like, it was the dream. And it was like someone dropped it in my lap. And then I was like, this is just fucked. I don't want to do this at all. It was so not what I thought it was. Wow. And then I just got to that point of like, so what is that thing? Why am I always so whinging about being unhappy on the inside when maybe I need to take a closer look at that? And so I had this sort of, you were talking about your late 20s when you had that moment. I had a real Saturn return in my late 20s, and then I had this next one in my late 30s and my early 40s where I was like, okay, I've just got to now spend the time on the inside, because I've been putting it off and I've been dodging it for so long. And then that really started down that path. So like you, when I went to Christian Village to do my yoga teacher training, I was taking 2 months out of my corporate life to try and work out what it was I was going to do. And I knew that I just wanted to spend time reading spiritual texts because I loved them, and I always had. And I thought, yoga on the side, I'm not going to be a yoga teacher. I'm just going to have this immersion in a spiritual environment where I can read the Gita and, gaze at my navel and try and work out what this life is all about. And it was there I suddenly had this idea that I could bring all of the stuff I did on one part of my life and all the stuff I did in the other part of my life and bring it together, which is what the Good Hustle is all about. How do we find purpose and meaning? But it's interesting, Sweeney, because I'm in the middle of doing 2 new books now, one with my business partner and a new one that's really focused on breath work and how do we transmute the pain and the trauma of our bodies through these spiritual practices. And I realized that even with the Good Hustle, which is it's been a help to a lot of people, I can read it now and I can still see my business and my spiritual identity being really separate, and like we can bring them together. There's no shame in spirituality and business, but I'm still in that headspace. And it's been really interesting now, sort of maybe 4 or so years after having done that training, and then, really inhabiting this me identity, how much I'm more integrated, which is relieving. But then I'll have a moment and go, oh God, we're back there again.
Caught in some other trip or some other identity that we've created again. It's a constant. I've just got a joyful attitude towards it. I think it's helped me a lot. I used to get like, I'm caught in this like identity again, and I've just worked 2 years on meditating and getting away from it, and now I've created another identity. And now I just realised that if I can just laugh at it and just go like, I just got caught again for a little bit. Ramdas talks about that. We're just getting caught. We're just helping each other just unpick, or you just caught a little bit there. You just caught in a little bit of a mind trap. Let's get back to like this goodness that's all happening.
It's humor, isn't it? Like I totally vibe with that, because it's that moment where you're like, and Ramdas is one of my teachers, and I love him so much. But I was watching Becoming Nobody on the weekend again, and there's so much wisdom in that film. And when he talks about, it's just, you just become the good meditator or the good yogi and the good holy man, and then you're suddenly like, you're going off your head about something really small, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm still human. That had a lot of wisdom for me, because I think that I won't speak for others, but I certainly really ran to inhabit that identity of the yogi and the spiritual, and, and then Ramdas has got this other great saying, which I think of all the time, which is, if you want to see how far along the path you are, spend the weekend with your parents. I often go up to Mum's house. Mum lives up the road from me, and she's really elderly now, and I'll do something and I'll get a good old dose of that childhood wisdom, and then I'll be right back into that identity, and it's like, Ramdas, why you? But it's great. I mean, I feel like humor is the one thing that actually really brings us back to the kind of messy, chaotic reality of all that it is being in the human existence. And it is funny. It doesn't have to be super spiritual and, serious. There's so much about the mess of the world and the mess of us that is fun. I take a lot of stock from that.
Me too. Yeah, the more we can laugh at ourselves, the more it just seems to keep going that way. And I think that's why I loved India so much, is because it was so chaotic. Like, it was just, I'm sitting there eating a nice thali, and then a cow just shits right next to me, and it's just like, what is this place? Like, and then I'm like patting the calf, and it's just like, what? How did I get here? And I was constantly always just asking myself, and then I'm like, now I'll go for a swim in the Ganga, and I'm just like, what is this place? It's just absolute chaos. And I realized
Yeah.
that I really thrive in those environments. I think like
Yeah.
at a core level,
Yeah.
if we can, when a lot of us do thrive in that kind
Yeah.
of chaotic mess, because it
Yeah.
is all just unfolding. And the more that we try
Yeah.
to understand it and try to restrict it and try to, I know this and I know that, then that's kind of
Yeah.
the limits of kind of
Yeah.
the fun almost. Yeah, for me. And
Yeah.
then we become
But
like
again,
adults and yeah.
we're wrapping words around things that don't have an explanation. I think
Yep.
that India shows Westerners that we don't have control of everything. We're really great at creating control. We're creating systems and identities and boxes, and everything's ordered, everything in its place. And like you, I really thrive in chaos. I always have. I love it. It's why I love startups. It's why I love that world where you don't have to know what's coming next. And India is great for that because it allows you to have the full spectrum of human experience and all the things we don't get in the West. Big healthy doses of death, big healthy doses of trauma and destruction and all of that stuff, and massive doses of beauty and spirituality and godliness. You know, it's all there, and that's what it is. I mean, if we're here to experience an embodied life, that's what it is. And I love it for that. And I love that it's that irony that we think that a cow won't shit next to us while we're eating. It's like, well, that doesn't happen in my house. You know? And that therefore it's wrong. And again, like this terrible separation that we create about what is a right thing, what's a good thing. And that we love all the good things. We don't love the bad things, that we're in this continual binary of, I want only the good and the pleasant. I don't want the bad and the uncomfortable and the learning. And so we quarantine ourselves from the things in life that actually give us the true experience because we don't want the bad. You know, there's that great Ayurvedic saying that the bitter comes before the sweet. And I think about that a lot because often when you're in a situation where it's like, oh, fuck, I just want this to end, you know, then you're like, oh, actually, this is the juice. It's like Ramdas would say, it's like, you know, this is where the learning is. This is where the real juice is. It's not in the bit where we're all happy and shiny and clean and, you know, orderly. It's in that other part. And so it's kind of like I start to really look for that now. I look for the bitter because I know, oh, sweet's at the end. You know, I'm going to work through this stuff. I'm not going to sit with this any longer. I'm going to stay in that discomfort, and boom. And then you get there and it's like, oh, that felt much better. And it's quicker, you know, when you take it head on. It's like doing your taxes.
It's a bit like on your taxes, yeah. I just remind me of a story. It's a really quick one, but it was after the Kumbh Mela and I was trying to get a bus home and I was with a friend and there was so many people, more people than I've ever seen. And I ended up in the doorway of a bus squished in between 4 other Indian men. And like some people might really freak out about that, but I was just like in tears of laughter, like in a fit of laughter because I couldn't even, like my legs weren't even on the floor. Like, and I was just like, I'm literally just getting carried home. Like I just can't. And I thought that I was going to be driving for about 8 hours, and I thought I'm going to be in this state for 8 hours. But it turned out only to be a half an hour, and then we got onto another bus. And I was like, okay. But in that period, when I thought I'm just going to be like lifted up off my feet for like the next 8 hours, I just couldn't help but laugh and just enjoy the ride. Like I was like, what a lesson! All I can do is enjoy this ride. I can't move. Like I literally can't move. So it's all these lessons daily. It was just
I love that. Such a good story. I've got such a great visual on that. But it's also that kind of human sandwich. What do you do?
I felt like it was a backline footy again or something, like in a scrum. Just in an Indian scrum. So just all right, boys, let's push together. Let's move.
Oh my God, that's so deep perfection. So good.
Yeah, it took me full circle. That's for sure.
But that's the kind of thing. It's like, so that's not the spiritual part of that story. Because went to the Kumbh Mela, had a scrum with like some Indian guys in a bus doorway for 8 hours. But it's like that. It's all the same. It's like it's all the same. That stuff. That's as spiritual as anything you would have done. You know, sitting at the feet of your guru. Like that's it. It's everywhere.
Exactly. That's the lesson, isn't it? I think that's the lesson I got reasonably quick, was just like, it's all here. It's all here. It's in this cow shit. It's being lifted up, and it's also in the Ganga. It's all here. It's always around us. And it's myself, it's my own limited ego identity conditioning that's stopping me from seeing that. Like, and that's it. And it's the practices that for me that I can embody that just keep helping me remember, essentially.
Yeah.
keep remembering.
It is just the remembering, isn't it? We've just got to keep on waking up. It's like, and I think that's in itself, that idea of being woke is just so hijacked by
it's crazy
marketing. But it is, in the book I'm writing with my business partner is called Awake, and we're writing the stories of all the people that we've met who have told us what it is to be awake. And that process, I think, is it's the most minuscule, gentle unfolding, that idea of each layering of those little experiences that we're suddenly awake to, and we see that. And it's like when we drop our shield, or when we see a pretty flower, or when we have that hilarious moment that turns out to be the best thing that's ever happened to us, but it could be a disaster. It's like, those are the little things that keep reminding us that we are in the divine all the time. And it's not limited to the pretty things, over here with the incense burning. It's like, it's just so important, so important. This is it. This is the most divine moment I'll ever have, that we're right here in it, because this is us, just being us with the whole world. So nice.
So good. So lovely to hear you say it like that. Yeah, I feel definitely, feel the same about all of that. For people listening, is there some things that you've learned, or some practices that you would like to share that could really help people to remember, or to get out of? I'm big on getting people out of depression and anxiety and mental health. I really see it as
me too.
Because I had my own troubles with it, so I have this different understanding of it. And I went through seeing psychologists and being on antidepressants, and from where I stand now, I see that it's a condition of mind, and that through the practices like meditation, I'm big on that also. That's the biggest thing that took me out of it. I see that that it is just a limitation of the mind, and that we can expand away from that. And what people that are going through depression and anxiety, there's only one place to go, and it's overcoming it. And that's what I don't hear enough people say, is that you can overcome this mental health, and you don't need to go to someone that's going to tell you that you have depression for the rest of your life, or you have anxiety for the rest of your life, and this is the way that you are going to be able to manage that and control that. There's a big process. I'm not saying it's easy, but there's a whole process of letting that unfold, and eventually there's a space that you can completely overcome it. And then it's just, you've been at rock bottom, then you're back at a neutral space. The happiest people are some of the people that have overcome some of the hardest things, and still just like vibrating that. So I don't know, I just felt like sharing that. So we went away from the question.
No, there's no going away from the question, because there is no question.
Great.
But it's a really important thing too, because I think we get really stuck in the medicalized identity of disease. And for me, I'm a firm believer in Western medicine. Western medicine is divine as well. Medicine is divine as much as natural and plant medicine is divine. It's all here to help us. However, what we do is we valorize science at the expense of the spiritual and the intuitive. So the intuitive wisdom schools of medicine, which have been with us for thousands and thousands of years, in days when we weren't all so anxious and depressed, they have as much value as being able to, do minute surgery. To sidebar though, so what I'm saying is my perspective on this, my opinion on this, is that all are valid, but what isn't valid is identity-based treatment, where you get stuck in, I'm a depressive, I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm that. These are symptoms of dis-ease. They're very much symptoms of our culture and what we aspire to. And I so deeply believe that depression and anxiety are a very direct result of being disconnected from source. When we are disconnected from communion and from the community of being with the oneness, no wonder we're fucking depressed. Like, it makes so much sense. And when we're constantly efforting and we're constantly striving and we're chasing the ring over there that we're never going to get to, because just like your and my experiences, when we do get there, we still feel the same. Is we need to really be able to take people through that journey of what it is. Now, the problem is most people present with depression and anxiety when it's acute. Most people aren't presenting when they're getting the early warning signs that they need to stop and take stock. When people are in acute trauma, you need to triage them in a very different way to you would if they were coming to you with early signs of discontent. So this is where we tend to sort of fling people straight into medication or into medical models, rather than going, okay, let's get you back to a place where you can start to do your own awakening work. So what what I found, and I'm a massive evangelist for this now. This is my whole life. I've got another whole sidebar about this massive download I had last year around breathing. But so I've always loved pranayama and as part of meditation and yoga, but doing actual breathwork journeying, working with somatic trauma release using that Stanislav Grof model and the various different models out there. I've never seen anything be as effective on the instant release of really long-held trauma and anxiety as that. And this is really, it kind of makes a lot of sense, because the problem with what we do in the West is we sit it in our heads. We're so head-oriented. We valorize science, we valorize intellect, we valorize thought and words. We never say, what's in your heart? When you're having that anxiety attack, what's here? You know, we're always like, oh, so let's talk about it. You cannot talk and think your way out of a problem that is existing in the cells of your body. So when you do breath work and you surrender to what happens in that process of intense breathing, the release that happens is much less traumatic, because it's allowing that stuff to work through you in the same way it came in through your feelings. So when we get into feeling-based, soma-based work, it's just incredible. So I can't even remember what the question was, but the answer is breath work. I kind of feel like for me, everything is like the answer is breath work or the answer is meditation. It's like whatever you want to ask me. But that's been really amazing. And so like you, I went down this road. I'll give you a little sidebar. I went to Bali last year to do a breathwork retreat with some people I've met at a conference I was speaking at and they were speaking at, and they walked in the room and I'm just like, who the fuck are you? Like, you're people I've been waiting to meet my whole life. And I had that real sort of like, whatever it is you do, I'm going to do it too. So they were doing a retreat and I was like, I'm going to go to Bali. I'm going to do breath work. Never done it before. I didn't even know. I was just like, you guys have got something I want to have a sniff at, you know? Mm-hmm. And so just that's kind of very much how I've lived most of my life. It's like, oh, I want what's over there. I'm going to go and find it. And you get there and you're like, oh, I didn't know it would be like that. I feel a bit like the fool from the tarot deck. It's like, I'm always off the edge of the cliff. What's going to happen at the bottom? I'm just going to find out. So got to Bali, started doing breathing and it was just wild. It was so much wilder than anything I'd experienced with any kind of psychedelic drugs. It was just like, holy shitballs, we can do this with our body. We can do this with air. Like, these things are just here and available to everyone. And when I was on the plane on the way over, I'd had this real moment of having this massive kind of download that I had to work with plant medicine and I had to work in this area. And I was like, oh, that's not really what I had in my plan, universe. But thanks for the note. I'll get back to you later. And then when I was there, I was like, oh, wow, this is the thing. And for me, this is the thing that everyone can do this. Everyone, no matter of gender or age or ability or color or sexual preference or whatever, like we can all breathe and we can all be held through a process and we can do it ourselves and we can do it for free. So like it takes people out of that inequity model of the medical system because people don't have access, a lot of people don't have access to really high quality therapy or even yoga or the mat to get on or the capacity to get out of the deep trauma that they're in to find a way to that. So the question was about how do I find my way through? So I got back there in the end, Jay. But
well, it's actually how do people listening find their way in?
So this is the way. So for me, the way is you kind of find your way in because you invariably, when you're ready, you'll stumble across. So they'll meet a you or a me, or they'll meet O2 Awakening people, and there'll be something in you that is a louder drumbeat than the stories you're telling yourself about your identity as someone who's depressed and anxious. There'll be something that you will rise up and go, oh, I need to try that, and I'm going to do that thing. Whereas you might have had that opportunity 20 times, but it hasn't been the point at which the opportunity and the will inside was strong enough to get you there. Wow. Yes. So for me, it's if you are in that place where you are just listening to this and you're like, you don't know what it's like to be this depressed or this anxious. Well, I'd say pretty much both of us probably do know what it's like, but also you have to be able to trust and have that faith of surrender to lift yourself up and just go, the next thing that presents itself that calls to me, I must action it and I must follow the call, because your body will have been telling you for your whole life what it is you need and your head will have been telling you something else. Listen to your body. Your body's, keeps the score. It's where the wisdom sits. I always say to people when they're like, do, it's like, okay, I don't want to hear this story. Come into your heart and then tell me what you're feeling here. We're story factories. All we do is create stories to make ourselves feel better about the world. Even if that makes us feel shit about the world, it calms our brains to have those stories going on. if we can train ourselves to get out of that and into a heart space and then bring breath and meditation into that, that's the way that we start to be able to move through some of these impediments to us being our whole selves, being our real selves in our divinity.
Wow, I'm blown away. You've articulated all that so well. Thank you for sharing all that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I really think that's going to reach those people out there that will be watching this and just looking for something. Yeah, I think is there. I feel like wrapping it up. I think it's been amazing. Is there anything else you want to share about your presence online or what's coming up for you? You mentioned a few books. Is there something we should be looking out for?
Yeah, we got a couple of books hopefully will be out late, maybe later this year, but probably early 2021. Um, I just say you'll find me if you need me. And
Yeah.
in the interim, like listen to these stories because we're everyone. We're just like everyone else. But I think there's been a moment where both of us have chosen to get out of discomfort by pushing through it, not going around it or over it. And that's the key. Like you need to be prepared to take on the challenge of feeling all the feelings, not just the
Mm.
nice feelings, but all the feelings, and learning to love that stuff that you've always disavowed about yourself and disavowed about the feelings. When we can bring it all in, we don't have to get rid of it. We don't have to clear our minds. We just have to be in love with all of us. If we're in that place, it's a really good place to start.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Such a wonderful message, and I think it's really important for these times, especially we're feeling a bit more isolated, and the world is going a little bit crazy externally, and internally tapping into this more heart-centered space is what's going to empower us really,
Yeah,
and is what's going
yeah,
to give us the stability to not be so swayed
yeah,
by the external things coming in at us. I think I've also had my own little journey through this time of getting swayed
mm,
by different things, and I keep coming back to letting it go, not letting the story overcome me, and coming back to center,
yeah,
and just actually
yeah,
looking at my reality here now in my own house and with the trees, and like the birds aren't worried about COVID-19, like they're just cruising. Like, so
yeah,
I'll just tap into like what the kookaburras are telling me, and it just
yeah,
it definitely is. Yeah, it might be easy for me to say because I am in the country and it's a bit more harder in the cities, but I think what we're speaking about is everywhere, and it can be seen if we're open to it.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Polly McGee.
It's been my great pleasure, Smitty, my great
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you so much. Yeah, I got no more to say. There's a lot to digest, actually.
I like to give people a smorgasbord.
Yeah, bit of this, bit of that, bit of that. Okay, now a day just to digest what I just listened to and what I just
Yeah,
watched.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm gonna watch that Ramdas movie. Actually,
So beautiful.
yeah,
So beautiful. He's such a key teacher for me. Love him.
beautiful. Okay, that's it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.